Kratz and our friend Bill Shaikin joining us right now from the LA Times. Too bad there's nothing going on in baseball in the Los Angeles area right now. Bill, great to see you. Unfortunately, we got to start with some really shitty news and mostly just thinking about the victim right now, but we do have to mix in, because it's a baseball show, some of the baseball components of this, and waited to talk to you about this. Julio Urías arrested on Sunday night on suspicion of a felony charge of corporal injury on a spouse. That was according to the sheriff's department in LA. He was released on bond. He's got a court date for later this month. He's not traveling with the team, of course, and this is the second time there's been an issue on this front that we know of. And there's your tweet from Bill Plaschke, who you work with, saying Urías simply cannot be allowed to pitch again for the Dodgers, a column that he wrote. So take us through the current situation, and also looking back for our fans. In 2019, he was suspended 20 games under that domestic violence policy. He wasn't arrested, but the league can still impose punishment. So your thoughts and what's next here?
Yeah, I think the point you just made is the most important one, that under baseball's domestic violence policy, you can be disciplined whether or not you are charged with a crime, whether or not you are convicted of a crime. So baseball decided yesterday, after word of the arrest surfaced, to launch its own investigation. Meanwhile, the police in Los Angeles will turn over their findings to the district attorney here. That's a parallel investigation. One of them could result in a charge for a crime. One of them could result in a suspension, but they don't necessarily run together. The timetable does not necessarily run together. So what probably comes next, because this is what usually comes next in these situations, is that Julio will be put on what baseball calls administrative leave. It's basically step away from the team, give us a few days or weeks to investigate. You'll still be paid, but you won't be playing, and they'll go from there.
Because the fact that he was arrested, does that have any more of a weighted result for this? Or is it really, because last time he wasn't actually arrested and charged and he got 20 games. And also, does that go on top of the fact that he's already violated this policy from MLB earlier in his career?
Yeah, I mean, Julio has not been charged at this point, so I just want to be super clear on that. But based on, as you noted, he's been suspended 20 games under this policy for a previous incident in which he was also not charged. So he would be a second offender under the policy. He would be the first player to be a second offender under the policy. And so because he was suspended 20 games last time, there's no mandate in the policy for how long a suspension would be. But you would have to think logically that a suspension for a second offense likely would be longer than a suspension for a first.
Bill, is there any precedent set, by the Dodgers because of the whole Trevor Bauer thing? Because he was never, I mean, it seems like, we don't know all the details clearly, but they couldn't wait to be like, see you later. So it seems like they've already set the precedent for this. Now, I know it was a little different situation, but man, the Dodgers are like, we ain't messing around. Like, Trevor Bauer, you did this. See you later. And this is Julio's second alleged offense.
Yeah, and in Trevor's case, as you mentioned, he was not charged either with a crime. But baseball did its own investigation, and because Rob Manfred does not need to convince members of a jury to put a player, behind bars, it's a much lower standard. Do we think it's more likely than not that he did these things? Yes. Did baseball talk to more than one woman who claimed Trevor Bauer did these things to her? Yes. Did Trevor Bauer get the longest suspension ever given under this policy, even after an arbitrator reduced it? Yes. So that's all the stuff that went to the Dodgers thinking. The other thing, quite frankly, is that the Dodgers had a big decision to make because Trevor Bauer was still under contract to them for this entire year. So they had to say, do we want to pay Trevor Bauer to pitch for us this year, or do we want to pay Trevor Bauer to go away? And obviously they chose the latter. But Urías' contract is up at the end of this year, and it's entirely possible the Dodgers may not have a decision to make because either an investigation might still be going or a suspension might be handed down. And either way, that would carry us through the end of the season.
It sounds like there's at least something to this story. Whatever happens in court, obviously that's past our expertise. But my two questions are, first, from a team perspective, to add to what AJ's talking about. I mean, it doesn't seem like he's coming back to the Dodgers. He's got that court case scheduled for the end of September. Of course, the Dodgers are going to be a playoff team. But even if for some reason, like, we get to the end of September and it's going to take some time, or, they're not able to keep him off the field for a certain chunk of time as a league, like, do the Dodgers want him pitching for them after what's gone on in the past? And it seems like already a lot of public pressure from fans saying, like, we don't want him on the field with situations like this occurring multiple times. So let's cover that first. Like, chance that he pitches for the Dodgers or for anyone the rest of this season seems like almost zero, no?
I think it's unlikely, if for no other reason than the calendar. I mean, these investigations don't happen in 24 hours. So I would imagine Major League Baseball wants to wait to see what the police and the district attorney turn up, see what evidence they can get from them, to the extent that the authorities are willing to share it. They do their own investigation. This just takes time. And like I said, whether he's suspended or he's not, that process takes some time. So I don't think he'll be playing again this season. And then, as we discussed, that's not going to be an issue just for the Dodgers. It's going to be an issue for 30 teams because he'll be a free agent.
Yeah, that's the other component is, how much do you think this impacts him? Because at one point in the offseason, again, I want to reemphasize that this is pebbles compared to what the big picture and what the potential criminal case looks like. But this is a baseball show. This was a player that probably would have been a $100+ million pitcher this offseason based on past success, even though this year has been up and down, and also his age. He's a young free agent. Now, I would think it's hard to imagine that he's a, whatever it is, 9-figure salary guy, and that there'll probably be some teams, depending on how things shake out, even if there's not a ton to this, right? Even if it doesn't end up in, say, getting convicted in anything, or it's a shorter suspension. I think there's some teams, Bill, that are going to say, nope, off our list. Enough for us. I mean, the Nationals are a ball club, but some people pointed out publicly that immediately cut Starlin Castro before even he was investigated or anything else. And I know he's a vet and a different kind of value to a team. But point is, I think some teams are just going to say, nope, not dealing with this.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back to last winter, as we talked about, the Dodgers were on the hook for Trevor Bauer's $22 million, whether they kept him or not. Once they said, we're not going to keep him on our roster, there were 29 other teams that could have picked him up, and the Dodgers would have still had to pay all but the minimum. So for $700,000, 29 other teams said no to Trevor Bauer. Julio Urías would be, as we talked about, if he is suspended, the first two-time offender, if you will, under baseball's policy. Americans like to say, give people a second chance. So the question is, did Julio already have a second chance?
Yeah.
Dude, well, I want to know, what I know we're just going to be speculation here.
Yeah.
But if he was already banged 20 games, and then we saw what happened with Trevor Bauer, I mean, are we looking at 100 games here?
It depends. I mean, there's a lot of
I don't
factors,
know. Again,
yeah.
We don't know the details, but I'm just thinking, he already got 20, right, for something. And now this is the second time. We could be talking. Trevor Bauer got, a year? 100 and something games?
I'll get you the exact number in a minute.
And then they reduced it down to 120 or something.
It was in the 200s.
Numbers.
They got it down to the 100s.
Numbers,
yeah. And maybe Bill's got better memory than I do. Otherwise, I can look it up in 30 seconds. But I mean, I would agree, Bill, if we're guessing, this is going to be a massive suspension for Julio again, is my guess. But what do you got?
Bauer was 324, and it was reduced to 194. So a lot either way.
So that's 2 years. He was suspended for 2 years, basically. 324 is 2 years.
Yeah. And then he reduced it to about
194,
a year and a quarter or whatever.
Month.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Wow.
So no, it's big. I mean, Julio Urías,
this is awful. It's just awful
on many fronts.
Oh yeah.
But again, most importantly, this cannot happen as an individual. It's a criminal matter, obviously.